Hello. So today I want to talk about another difficult subject, blame. Nobody likes being blamed. No one likes being criticized. It's a very difficult thing to accept criticism. And then, accepting blame as a result of criticism, or even without criticism, can be really, really difficult. And there is a trend these days to sort of transfer blame onto anybody else. Projection is a word that you hear a lot these days. And sort of an attempt not to be accountable with a lot of cases, or to transfer the accountability to anyone or anything else you can find. I saw an interesting advert recently which has got various different versions of songs about procrastination. They want you to spend money on this sort of psychological tool that's meant to help you deal with, not being decisive, procrastinating, or putting things off. It's a fancy word for putting everything off, or as the people say in Ireland, putting it on the long finger, which is something that happens a lot. We all do it to some extent. I do it. I put things off, but I try to avoid it. And my way of dealing with it is to accept that maybe I don't want to do it, but in the back of my mind I will continue to know that I haven't done it, and it'll be bothering me until I do it. So I tend to deal with procrastination by being proactive and actually just getting whatever it is done, and then it's done and it's out of the way. You've cleared your plate, and you can move on to other things that you can procrastinate over, perhaps, instead of having this huge pile of undone tasks that you should do, and you just keep putting off, and it's in the back of your mind, and you know you should do it. So I don't think there's any need for any particularly complex therapy to deal with that. I think it's a matter of observing your own behavior and observing the results. And if you do actually deal with it, it's probably a lot easier than putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. I think so much of life is about fear, really, fear of doing things. In my experience, the reality of any given situation is not normally as bad as the fear that's associated with whatever it is you want to avoid. And that goes too for accepting accountability and accepting blame. I think when you think, oh, I can't take the blame for this, I just can't. Well, why not? Is it that terrible to admit that you made a mistake? Is it that hard to apologize for something you did wrong? Especially if you know you've done something wrong, you've done something that was stupid or selfish or foolish, especially if it affects other people. And there's this kind of false premise that you're perfect, you're great just as you are, you don't need to change, you don't need to do anything. You're you, and if people don't like you as you are, then F them. Which is absolutely ridiculous, because we all know there's a lot of people who have problems in this world, who are sometimes very bad people, sometimes just people who are a bit broken, and maybe just a little bit broken. We end up doing stupid, selfish, or unkind things to other people, not really even intending to. But then there's other people who really are just not very nice, and they enjoy being nasty to other people. But I think recognition of responsibility for your actions is key here. So when you do a bad thing, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are evil or a bad person, but if you own it, if you accept taking the blame for even an accident, say you tripped up some old person by accident, that's your fault. Rather than just running away from the problem, you could just maybe accept it was an accident, it's your fault, you did it, maybe go and help this person, give them first aid or whatever, or check they're okay, instead of just scuttling away from it and pretending it didn't happen. Because I think psychologically we all know when we've done something wrong. We all know that we actually are to blame, but we create elaborate sort of mental gymnastics to try and avoid dealing with the fact that we have done things that we shouldn't have done, and trying to avoid actually being accountable and taking the blame. And yes, sometimes it is your fault. So own it, accept it, deal with it, process the fact that you made a mistake, instead of trying to run away from it or trying to project it onto someone else. I think there's so many people that fail in life, not because they're incapable, but because they fail to accept their own limitations, they fail to accept their own mistakes, they fail to learn from their mistakes, they don't want to accept any blame, so they just keep repeating the same cycles over and over and over and never make any progress. But then there's other people who just do amazing things, people who've had like the worst start in life or terrible traumas. I mean, I've had more than my fair share of trauma in my own life, I'd say, but I don't let that hold me back. Okay, bad stuff has happened to me on many occasions. I could have used it as an excuse to go, oh, poor me, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that, I'm not going to do that, it's so-and-so's fault or society's fault or whatever. But I try not to do that. Everyone maybe wants to have a little pity party sometimes, and when things are going bad, and that's fine. But you pick yourself up and you get on with it, and if you are to blame for things, and you have to do a bit of self-analysis, reflection, to actually accept that you are to blame for certain things, then just accept it and try and learn from it and move on and do better next time. Fail better next time, as I think it was, I forget his name, it was Irish playwright that said that. His name escapes me. Anyway, maybe I'll put it in the description if I remember his name. Anyway, that's how we grow, that's how we learn as people, by accepting our mistakes, our faults, and trying to do better the next time, instead of just, reflecting all our problems onto society and projecting our own faults onto other people. I mean, I can give you an example of a person that I know whose life was completely destroyed and he rebuilt it. At around age 30, he had a horrific motorcycle accident. Not only did he lose his memory, he ended up with severe skull injuries and multiple broken bones across his whole body. He was after coming out of this coma, he was basically erased. His mind was erased. He didn't know who he was. He didn't know how to talk. He didn't know how to walk. He was basically reduced to being a baby. After being 30 years on this planet or so, he was back to being an infant. And I mean, that's probably one of the worst traumas you could probably have without actually dying, I would have thought, to be reduced to that and have to recover your life. And by amazing determination and strength of character, he's made a very remarkable recovery. He'll never be fully able. He still has problems and difficulties. But, he's someone who's actually very positive, someone who had his entire life ripped away from him. He lost his partner, he lost any potential of having a family, unable to work, really put into a really difficult situation, but he just was very determined to get on with his life. And I have nothing but admiration for him, his tenacity, his determination. He could have just said, oh, society's at fault, that truck driver's at fault, or you could think of lists of people you can blame for all your problems. It's very easy to do that. But, people like him, who've been through a terrible trauma, a terribly disadvantaged person, he managed to pick himself up, which just shows you what you can do with the right mindset. And you look at people from all walks of life. Some people have really come from the gutter and they made a success for themselves. And, these kind of people don't blame anyone. They're not looking to blame society or other people for their difficulties. They may acknowledge the difficulties they've had and the traumas they've had, but they're not letting it hold them back. They're not letting it stop them from living their life. And ultimately, a lot of this mentality that you don't need to change, you don't need to improve, you're perfect, Don't accept crap from anyone. Don't acknowledge anything else outside of your own requirements for your own life. That you don't have to listen to other people. You don't have to take accountability. All this is actually just self-defeating nonsense, mumbo jumbo. In my book, it really is, because the only way that you improve anything in your life is through effort. You know, as a society, combined efforts together help improve the world. And in your own life, the person who has the most control and the most ability to improve your life is actually you yourself, and nobody else is actually going to do it for you. So I think there are obviously setbacks people have, and not everything is your fault. A lot of things that happen in life are random, or they're the fault of other people. But within that, there is so much that we do have control over, and not only control over what happens, but control over how we feel and how we react to things. You know, when you have a trauma, you can just sit there and feel sorry for yourself, or you can choose that, right, that was a setback, you know, that was difficult, I don't feel great about that, but I'm going to get on with my life. I'm not going to let it stop me. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to pick myself up and do my best to make the best of my life, the best of the situation. And, you know, people who have that attitude are usually more successful, they're more happy, and they're more likely to have some kind of peace and sort of harmonious sort of mental state in their life. If you're constantly looking for someone to blame for your problems, constantly looking for problems, reasons not to be happy, then you're going to find them. So I would say accepting blame is a key part of actually growing up, of actually being a mature human being. And yes, it is your fault sometimes when things go wrong. But by accepting your own part in tragedies or problems or any part of life that doesn't go to plan, that's an opportunity to learn something and to grow as a person. And taking the opposite tack actually just negates any possibility of actually making any progress in your own development as a person. So that's my advice, is stop blaming everyone else, accept reality, accept that some things are beyond your control and other people's input has a lot to do with that. But there's so much you can do in your own life that you can improve on, you can change, especially if you take accountability for your own thoughts, your own words, and your own actions that you make in this world. And I think if you take that on board, you've got some chance of making a positive contribution to the world. And maybe by the time you shuffle off this mortal coil, you'll have actually contributed something to making the world a better place for everyone else and future generations. And to me, that's part of why we're all here. We're not here to just do each other over and selfishly just take all the time. We can evolve to a higher form of consciousness if we want to. And I think, why wouldn't we want to? Why wouldn't we want the world to be a better place than it is now for future generations? Anyway, that's enough for now. I'm going to leave it there. I hope you liked that. Leave a like, feel free to subscribe, and check out my other videos on my channel if you found this one interesting. And please leave a comment if you have anything to say about that. Okay, that's it for now. Bye bye.